Thank you. I think I'll address some of those issues during my talk today also. And this is the photo from the day that Chua mentioned that the military came on our campus after the military coup, when we organized something to address the issue of authoritarian rule and military rule. So yeah, they attended our seminars or come to visit us and ask us what are you going to talk about? Can you be not so direct or not so like I talk about the issue of politically sensitive issues. So we have been living in that situation for about 1 year after the military coup in 2014. And not to mention that in other occasions they came on attending academic seminars in not in the military uniform. Just to give you the context of what Peril has just mentioned to you. So thank you to the Justice in Southeast Asia Lab or JSEALab for offering the Scholar in Resident Fellowship at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and giving me the opportunity to discuss academic freedom in Southeast Asia. So for this presentation, I will discuss what it means to practice activist scholarship in Southeast Asia. I will put this discussion into the conversation with how we define academic freedom in Southeast Asian context, which is one of the work that we at the SEACAF, Southeast Asia Coalition for Academic Freedom, has been trying to do. And yesterday I met a group of activist scholars based here in Madison, and I'm very impressed by what they are doing, what they are thinking, what they are mobilizing and engaging with social justice issues. So I hope that the Southeast Asia experiences will also speak to what's happening here and lead to some solidarity to defend the shrinking space for us working within the academy. I would like to start by sharing the stories of three friends and colleagues from Southeast Asia who are activist scholars. Kuyin Hui from University of Malaya was investigated under Section 500 of the Penal Code of Malaysia for defamation after she wrote a column for the Malaysian Insider about the police arrest of students of the protester. So the Inspector General of the police claimed that her comment on the arrest is inaccurate and confusing. Luckily, they decided not to pursue with the official charge, but that leads to Yin Hui to be more careful in what she writes and speaks. Another colleague, Romel Rodriguez from the University of the Philippines. He's a professor in literature and creative writing. He didn't have, this is his book, he didn't have the chance to hold his book because his book was banned by the authority just after it was published, but before it was launched to the public. It was pulled out of classrooms and libraries by the Filipino Language Commission. The commission claimed that the book, which is a novel, not a history or political book, it's a novel, and the commission claimed that the book contains subversive and subliminal messages that could violate the Filipino Republic Act on number 11479 or the Contentious Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020. And the police came out in the national television and cited some of the content of the book that they say that this is the reason why the book must be banned, because Romel has put the word revolution and weapons in his novel. Another colleague, this one, Herambang Wiraraman, a constitutional law expert from Indonesia, and he's now working at the University of Gadjah Mada in Indonesia. He has been working closely with legal aid organizations in providing expert testimony in court in cases against activists, student activists, and cases on West Papua movement. He reports being surveillance in classroom by unknown individuals. The three are doing human rights education and teaching about social justice in their classroom and research. They do that in their respective field of international relations, in case of Ying Hui, English literature in case of Rommel, and law for Herlambang. There are among many other activist scholars in the region who are living a precarious life because of their activism. In particular, hundreds, if not thousands, of Burmese scholars who joined the civil disobedience movement and lost their position are also what we can call activist scholars. Many of them are working on promotion of democracy and human rights in Myanmar, despite living a very difficult life underground or in exile. And this is how I often see them or know them, our friends from Myanmar. Because they, through their avatars or their pseudonyms, often I have to try to remember the name that they use in public, because that's not the name I know them, or try to guess who are they when we meet online. And that's their life. And as Thurong mentioned, some of those activists in Myanmar live during the armed conflict, in the situation where internet connection is on their daily life, electric cut is also there, or they live undocumented in Thailand. But what all these form of scholar activists or activist scholarship have in common is that they directly challenge the status quo, or they engage or they try to train and make people to challenge the status quo. The result is that they are under attack by the state and also by the civil society who act on behalf of the state. Their works also extend beyond the classroom and academic contribution to different spheres of political action. They are, actually all of them, are actively engaged in national and regional networks promoting human rights education, or democracy, citizenship education, or in defense of academic freedom. Ying Hui worked with the Network on Human Rights Education and Research, and also with SEACAF. Rommel is the president of the All-UP, or University of the Philippines, Academic Employees Union, and he's very active, as you can see from his Facebook post. Herlambang is the key leader in Indonesia Caucus for Academic Freedom, or GIGA. What do these stories tell us about activist scholarship and academic freedom in Southeast Asia? So when we look at activist scholarship, I borrow a very simple definition just so that we are on the same page when we continue this discussion. Most, as I mentioned earlier, that most of the academics I work with in Southeast Asia are what we may call activist scholars. This doesn't mean the academics who join the protest or social movement in their personal capacity, although many of them do. But we are talking about the new form of knowledge production by the activist scholarship, which attempts to bridge the divide between theory and practice, and between researcher and the research subject. From the epistemology perspective, activist scholarship are doing political engagement aiming towards the promotion of social justice. As such, academic or scholarly work are not limited to academic profession or academic or classroom activities. It expands to cover the act of doing academic work, the act of doing research, the act of knowledge production beyond the classroom, beyond the official learning, the so-called learning objective that we all have to put in our course syllabus. Activist scholarship can take many forms. I am highlighting a couple of forms here that we are doing in Asia, in Thailand in particular. In the pedagogical field, there are a diverse group of academics working on promoting critical education and citizenship education. Academics put together to do research or run action research while training on working on civic education or human rights education or multiculturalism, among others. In the research field, Academic works with local communities in community-led research, either to find a solution to local problems or to produce knowledge to counter dominant knowledge. For example, we have long history of academic work in forest community. Ian here also know very well, and they work with the community to document how local communities have traditional customs that enable them to live in harmony with the forest. In Thailand and Indonesia, such community knowledge has been promoted and presented to counter the state narrative about the forest community and the state dominant discourse of forest management. What I put here are actually the research that the researcher in Thailand work with the local communities. The one at the top from the work with the communities in local mangrove forest, and this one in Chiang Rai, where they try to document fish species as part of the movement to defend the natural resources and also to fight the blasting of the rapid along Mekong River. So those who produce the knowledge in this scholarship, activist scholarship, are not the academic researcher, but the community. And the role of the academic researcher as a supporter or facilitator of the production of the local knowledge. Another form of activist scholars, which might be less obvious, is through the production of critical scholarship that question the status quo. You can see this among the scholars that do critical study of history and political science, where they challenge the state's narrative of history, which for Thailand, it centers around the role of the monarchy and the nationalist discourse. For those in the Philippines, they work on the education about Marcos martial law period. For Indonesia, scholars are working on documenting and talking about the genocide in 1965. So these are just some of the work, like for example, in the Philippines, there are a group that called the Network in Defense of Historical Truth and Academic Freedom, which was formed after Duterte came to power because they want to fight against historical revisionism, they try to erase what Marcos did during the national period from the textbook and history of the Philippines. We have Thai academics who work on criticizing, examining the role of the monarchy and the role of the military. We have, not even in university level, some high school teacher in Indonesia who feel obliged to teach the student about 1965. And that also applies to a number of high school teachers in Thailand who feel that they need to talk about the political violence, the history of political violence. They need to talk about how they need to enable their students to have a critical view about the nation, the national narrative of Thainess. Exploring activist scholarship points to the blur line between personal and professional actions. This also linked to the issue of how to define and defend academic freedom, which I will discuss a little bit more later. I like to highlight some of the dilemmas when we put the academic freedom in the context of strong activist scholarship. First of all, and I think when I started to work in SEACAF, I kept reminding myself and also kept saying that academic freedom doesn't mean freedom of academics or students. These scholars in Thailand, actually two of them are in fact Wisconsin alumni, they join political activities, including giving speech during the demonstration during 2020, 2021, or joining the symbolic act to support the release of political prisoners. Most of them are student activists in Thailand. Some of them are prosecuted, the one with the black fingers, because you have to do the fingerprint at the police station when you report to the police. They are prosecuted for what they talk during the protest, like tens or hundreds of protesters who are also prosecuted for what they demanded for. Their right to speak during the demonstration should be protected by freedom of expression, but sometimes we argue that they have right to speak because they are academics. And I think we have to be very careful to make that statement, because if you say they have right to speak because they are academics, then it may have the effect in limiting freedom of expression, which should be broader and available for everyone. Another dilemma that I find when I work on academic freedom and activist scholarship is on how academic freedom is defined and whether it covers the context where we have strong activist scholars. So these are the two key documents, international documents that define academic freedom. The principle for implementing the right to academic freedom define academic freedom in a very generic term. The UNESCO and ILO recommendation on concerning the status of higher education teaching personnel put clearly that it is about the right without constriction by prescribed doctrine to freedom to teach and discussion. This sounds good, but if you put this in the context of activist scholars or from where I come from on human rights education, how can we understand that? Because when we look at it from human rights education, we are talking about human rights values. We are not neutral. Or when we look at it from the perspective of social movement, we are not neutral. Our role is to show dissent and question the power and the authorities. And also, if you look at it from the perspective of the role of higher education, which seem to have responsibility, right? And in addition to the obligation to seek and impart truth according to the ethical and professional standard, higher education also has obligation to respond to contemporary problems that needs of all members of society. I put here the quote from Judith Butler in her writing about academic freedom. She argues that higher education should open up the possibility of free and critical thought, including intellectual position that call into question the status quo, the policies of government, and possibility of new political formation. So these imply active critical education, which unavoidably means that education would involve speaking truth to power and involve academics as the one who make that happen. When we look at the discussion on the role of education, especially in higher education, another thing that we need to keep in mind is we are not talking about a politically neutral institution, especially in Southeast Asia. Education institution, education workers are seen to have responsibility to serve the society, I put in the quotation mark, which because it often means to serve the ideology of the state. From the perspective of the state, the university is always part of the state mechanism, which has a duty to instill and create, quote unquote, the good citizens for the country. As we can see from the higher education law, I put only a case of Indonesia and Thailand. In Article 8, paragraph 2 of the Indonesia Higher Education Law, it says that development of science and technology shall be done by academic through learning and research by upholding religious values and national unity for the advancement of human civilization and welfare. For Thailand, Thai higher education law clearly put that you need to work, I'm speaking as a university lecturers, that we need to work to serve the needs of the nation, to build global competitiveness, to develop individuals into complete human beings which I don't really know what it means. Okay, and we have to foster good character, discipline, and national pride. We have to cultivate understanding society and so on. We have to instill a sense of responsibility towards their family, community, society, and the nation. We also have to respond to the national strategy, which for those who are familiar with Thailand, we are the so-called the national strategy that we have to follow at the moment was drafted by the military junta, and it has about at least 15 years or 10 or 15 years to go that we always have to claim that we follow that strategy. So what it, and also, so this in the context of higher education as a state machinery, university also in Thailand also we are also expected to do what we call academic services, which for many universities it means doing consultancy to raise money for the institution. We are also expected to do social engagement, but all of those activities fall within this framework. What it also means is that any activities that we would like to do, something like a project that if this project was in Thai university or a research, we have to show that it aligns with the national development agenda and the national strategy drafted by the military junta in order to get official support from the government or from the university. So in practice, I just tick the box whenever I do something, and this day you just put that your work aligns with SDG, and you will get approval from the university. So that's how we survive. But this kind of ideological control has been infiltrated into academic circle in many forms, not only through the regulation. There are special training courses promoted among high school teachers where they have to attend a week-long training camp in Thai history. This is not led by the Ministry of Education, but by the Ministry of Defense. The same trainers also engage in the Ministry of Education training workshop on development of teacher capacities in managing learning on Thai history. So in 2024, the Ministry of Interior launched this Teacher A or Kruko teaching education program, 5-day training, and they're also trying to promote like to have history course, national history course in at least 5 hours a week. Yeah, it says the training for trainer, for those who teach transfer knowledge on local Thai history. And yes, you can, if you are familiar with the Thai political context, the how you call the scarf, right? In yellow, show your allegiance to the monarchy, and the pink, in a way, also have the royal meaning. Last year, the Office of the National Commission on Science Research, 2024, the Office of the National Commission on Science Research and Innovation Promotion in Thailand proposed a draft royal decree on the ethical standard for research. The draft decree mentioned 5 types of research that can be considered as, quote, research which create problems with religion's principle, customary, or the good morals of society. And they classify all this research and say all this research need to get research ethic approval from the national committee, not the institutional IRB committee as we are familiar with. Luckily, the proposed law faced strong objection from the academic community and it was withdrawn. The same thing happened everywhere. In Indonesia, there are competing history. They the state version of history about 1965, and the state also tried in 2006, Indonesian curriculum tried to portray the communists as culprit for the September 1965 movement. In the Philippines, the Department of Education tried to remove the term Marcos dictatorship from the grade 6 social study program, so they removed the term dictatorship from the textbook. In Cambodia, the textbook also mentioned the atrocity during the Khmer Rouge, but did not discuss in detail because we don't want Khmer children to repeat the bitter history. We try to bury them, bury even the smell of the bitter history. Within this context, I emphasize that academic freedom cannot be understood as neutral value or principle. As in other human rights values, it takes sides. It emphasizes how academic works need to go beyond neutral discussion of different ideas, or simply open opportunity for people with different ideas to express their views. But I have to admit on how to put this into the definition of academic freedom and into actual practice where we respect different ideas, but at the same time also promote human rights and democratic values without the cost of protection of different political opinions. That's something I think we really need to work and try to contextualize our understanding and practice of academic freedom. With all this, I mentioned about the activist scholars, the challenge, the state ideology, and academic freedom. When we look at, there are activist scholars who are because of their work, they are in conflict with the state. Because the scope of permissible academic inquiry is often limited by the state ideology. I share here some of the books that are banned or got questioned by the authority in Thailand. Just some, there are more. The author of this book, this one, are now living in exile. His book, the English version, got awards because it comes from his PhD thesis. It got award, but the Thai translation got banned. Paul Chamber, you may know about him. He got deported from Thailand. Win also living in exile. Phuong Thong Pawakapan wrote a book about the role of the military, and she got threatened by the army to sue her for defamation, and her university refused to step up and defend her. So in the region, and we also have this university employment contract in Thailand, which say we all have to subscribe to the democracy with king as head of the state regime. This means any work that questions the role of the monarchy put you in conflict with your own university and the state. And what it means in practice can range from research grant that is available only on some topic, or it can lead to self-censorship, or state control of curriculum, bans on books, removal of certain contents from textbook. I put these 4 books up, not only because they are academic books that question authorities, but I also argue, in particular, especially for Phuong Thong, I could also say for Phuong Chon, that they are activist scholars. They take their academic journey or their academic work as part of the work to question authorities and to create social justice. And through their academic works, they put them into conflict with the state. These are just small examples from my beloved country. Actually, there are many other cases where academics are persecuted or harassed when they make public comments on sensitive issues. And in different countries, the sensitive issue differs. Right? In Indonesia, if you talk about 1965, or if you talk about climate change, or if you talk about West Papua, you could be under attack. In Thailand, apart from the monarchy, if you talk about conflict in southern Thailand, or now conflict between Thai and Cambodia, you are also under attack. Or in the Philippines, boss, martial law period, so that could put you under attack. Now, I keep this statistic at the end. Usually you start with that statistic or indicator of academic freedom, right? Because I don't think it really represents the situation in the region. So this is the from the Free to Think report, the latest version published by Scholar at Risk. It documented only these cases, which those that we heard of about, we know are much more than this. Because for Scholar at Risk report, they only document killing, violence, disappearance, imprisonment, or loss of position and travel restriction. But from what I have been discussed and from what we have seen in the region is academic freedom is, repression of academic freedom is more subtle. You cannot be captured the situation of academic freedom with only these indicators. The State of Academic Freedom Index by them show a little bit more nuance. Show this. Oh, sorry, no. Oh no, actually I make a video of this, but I don't know how to play it. So that it will show the state and the situation in the countries, in the world. Yeah, so this is update one, will show the situation in the US, I would say. But in Southeast Asia, of them are not in good shape. We then look at not only on the physical violence, but on freedom to research and teach, freedom of academic exchange, institutional autonomy, campus integrity, and freedom of academic cultural expression, which may, I think it can capture more of the situation that I have been discussing with you. Again, what I have been sharing is just part and fraction of the situation of academic freedom in the region. And I just because I try to highlight the dilemma when we look at academic freedom and activist scholarship. There are a lot more that has been going on. But this, luckily, I think I'll just share with you a little bit as to end it, that we, at least there are some quite active groups or network and academic in the region that have been trying to promote and defend academic freedom. There are national and regional networks, in Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines. They are quite active, like the Indonesian Caucus on Academic Freedom, SEACAF, or even Indonesia, there is Malaysia Academic Movement. In Thailand, we have Thai Academic Network for Civil Rights, and there are couples of networks in the Philippines, and also active academic workers union in the Philippines and Indonesia. Although in Indonesia they are not legal, like official academic workers union, but at least some groups have been formed and trying to defend academic rights, the rights of the academic and academic workers. The only place where there was official academic workers union is in the Philippines. Then we also have the government-endorsed ASEAN University Network in Human Rights Education, which together with SEACAF, we are now proposing what we call human rights-based university, which includes the principle based on academic freedom. There has been quite strong collective action and movement building, especially among academic and university staff union in the Philippines and in Indonesia. We are also working on providing some protection of scholars at risk, which is we find that's challenging to bring forward a discussion in Southeast Asia, because we don't think that we can go to our university administration and say we want to provide protection to scholars at risk, because that's not the discourse that our university listen to. Unlike some of the universities that are part of the scholar at risk network here in the US, in the Americans, or in Europe. And of course, we cannot do this without the protection and promotion of academic freedom and freedom of expression in general. Again, this is just a fraction of what's going on, and I think I'll end it here and open it for questions and comments.